Hey friends, it's Jasmine. I hope you all are doing well. Today I wanted to come on here and show you how to make a sour jar. A sour jar is a form of container magic that is very, very popular in hoodoo, though is found pretty much throughout the world in various cultures, but most predominantly found within hoodoo practices. For this spell, you really aren't going to need a whole lot, and most of the ingredients you are probably already going to have readily accessible for you at home. A sour jar is probably one of the most popular forms of left-hand path practice or protection magic even sometimes. It doesn't necessarily have to be fully with baneful intent. It can also be more protective. But if you do wish to involve baneful intentions or to seek harm or to quite literally make something sour, this is one of the best ways to do it. It's very easy, it's very simple, and like I said, chances are you already have most of this stuff around your house. And remember, you don't need to spend a bunch of money to make a spell or to do a spell. It's nice to have various herbs or crystals or, rare items that, cost money. It's nice to have those things. At the end of the day, the magic does come from right here. So you don't have to purchase that in a store because you are already inherently a divine magical creature. Also, witches throughout history have always used what they've had. Regardless of what they've had, that's what they've used. So, don't be afraid to go into your kitchen, to go look through your spice cabinet, to go out in your own yard or the woods behind your house or in your neighborhood. Don't be afraid to use the natural resources that are provided to you abundantly in the nature around you. You want to give a disclaimer here, and if you are not particularly interested in baneful magic or left-hand path practice, this is probably not going to be a video for you. I'm going to be focusing on how to use a sour jar in order to, essentially sour someone's life, or to make misfortune or misery or to bring bad luck into someone's life. So if that is not something that you are interested in practicing, that is totally fine. I do think that knowledge is power, and even if it's not something that you would personally practice, being aware of how this is done can definitely benefit you in your practice. And if you know how something is done, you can also kind of troubleshoot and brainstorm on how to also reverse or remove as well. So that being said, though, if you are not particularly interested in, more baneful workings, then this might not be your video. I just wanted to give that disclaimer so that way you have time to click off of this video if that is not your jam, okay? So the first thing that I am going to do would be to essentially bless and cleanse the space. I'm going to be using some Bokor for this. So if you guys are not familiar what Bokor is, I can make a whole other video on that. You can bless and cleanse your space any way that you would like to. You could use some Palo Santo, some rosemary, a little bit of mugwort, some sage, some dragon's blood. You can cleanse and bless your space however you want. You do not have to use Bokor in order to do so. I am doing that because in this particular spell, this particular sour jar, I do want to invoke some of my own bloodline. And I know that this is what they would prefer. So I'm going to light up this charcoal disc here. I'm going to be using the Oud Epitazm. Like I said, you do not have to use this method. This is just what I am doing. This is not even necessarily a part of the sour jar. This is just to prepare the space that I'll be doing the spell in, to bless it and to consecrate it for magical and ritualistic purposes. Coat my hands and myself in the smoke and my space. Okay. I'm going to put this over here. So now that we have that going, the first thing that you are going to need, guys, is a container. You can use any sort of container you'd like. The recommended container would be a glass container. So I have a couple of options here tonight. These are the two options. Both of these are just something I had around the house, and chances are you are going to have these around your house as well. The first option, this is an old pasta sauce container. It's a glass jar with a metal lid. This was the Priano 4-cheese Alfredo sauce. Okay, so this is a glass jar, which I cleaned this jar after I used it, and I also soaked it in hot water and some Dawn dish soap. That's a really great pro tip to help get those labels off. You don't have to take the labels off. I just prefer to. That's a little
bit of that Virgo energy in me. I would rather make sure it's cleaned really well and stripped of its previous use.
So that's why I did that. So here's one option. The other option, which this is what I will be using tonight, I'm not going to be using this full size jar. Instead, what I'm going to be using actually is an old bay leaf jar. So this is the same concept. I had used all the bay leaves that were in here. It was a glass jar. So I went ahead and I cleaned it out, and then I soaked the label off. Okay, so once you get the jar that you would like to use for your spell, you're pretty much ready to go. Aside from, you do want to make sure that you cleanse this jar. So what I'm going to be using, this is just a cone of dragon's blood. Dragon's blood is very protective and purifying, and I want to cleanse this jar completely and smoke it out. So I'm going to drop this cone actually in here. And while I am doing that, we will talk a little bit about some of the herbs and spices and things that you will need. I'm going to smoke out this jar. If you've never seen anything like this before, I've taken the lid of the spice jar and I've put the cone here. I'm gonna let that get a good smoke to it. And then once it does have a nice smoke coming up off of it, I'm going to take the jar and I'm going to put it over the cone. So it'll be almost like upside down like so. Now the cone will likely go out because it needs air to burn, but that's fine because I'm going to use this whole thing anyway as part of the spell that we're doing. Some of the things that you are going to need, I'm gonna go over some of the basic ingredients first. You know, I've been in the craft now for roughly a decade, so the way I do this has changed over the years, but I'm going to show you some of the traditional ingredients first, and then you can kind of add and tweak your own elements to it. Kind of like earlier, you might not be lighting Bakor as part of your ritual ceremony. Maybe that's not something that you do. You don't have to light that. You can light, you know, any other sort of cleansing, blessing, consecration sort of herb to bless your space with. So one of the most popular things, okay, is going to be chili peppers. So here's my chili peppers. I keep them in just this little mason jar. You can really use any sort of hot pepper that you would like. Tonight, I'm going to be using these red chilies. The reason why we are going to be using these red chilies is because these basically add a whole lot of heat to the spell. Add a whole lot of heat to the spell that you're doing. And in left-hand path practice, if you are using these for a baneful working, you can actually use these to make someone go away or to make someone's spirit be ignited and be burning, you know, to cause pain and stinging sensations and strife, and just to get someone out of your life very quickly. This is also very much associated with the element of fire, so you can think of all of the baneful ways that you could use that element of fire in your working. So chili pepper. This is probably, I'm gonna say the second, actually, most popular traditional ingredient in a sour jar. The main ingredient that you're going to use, and I'm going to be using a substitution of this tonight, just because I don't happen to have this on hand, but
urine. Okay.
So I know that not everyone is super cool with using their own urine in the craft. You don't have to. You can if you want, but you do not have to. I'm not against using urine. I just don't have any right now. So what I'm using instead is vinegar. This is a very common and popular alternative to urine. And I actually picked this up from, I think, Aldi, and it was like $1. And I think I've seen this same vinegar actually at the dollar store as well. This is just plain white vinegar. That's what I'm going to be using. The reason why vinegar or urine is used in the sour jar is because it can help make something incredibly foul in baneful practices. Now, vinegar, not urine, can also have other magical properties as well, but in more of a baneful practice, we are going to be using vinegar to make something sour and to make something foul. You know how vinegar sometimes can kind of irritate your sinuses or burn your eyes or just trigger a gut reaction in you of,
Ugh.
that's why we're going to be using the vinegar. So this is actually going to be the base of the sour jar. And then we're going to be adding our dry ingredients after. So you definitely want to get you some vinegar. You definitely want to get you some chili pepper, okay? Like I said, those are the most popular ingredients. Now, sometimes also hot foot powder will be added to this. If you don't have hot foot powder or you don't know what hot foot powder is, I'm not gonna really talk much about hot foot powder actually in this video. But if you don't have any hot foot powder, that's totally fine. You just definitely wanna make sure that you get some cayenne pepper. Okay, so cayenne pepper, it's very similar to the red chilies. The cayenne pepper is in baneful magic to make someone basically go the hell away from you, get the hell away from you, stay away from you, and also to cause burning in their spirit. This is also associated with the element of fire, so you can think of the baneful ways that you can be using fire. Cayenne pepper is to really essentially put a fire under somebody's ass. Very similar to the chili peppers, we're just kind of doing a 2-for-1 here and kind of creating a layered effect tonight. So cayenne pepper, red chili pepper, vinegar. Okay, another thing that is traditional that you're gonna want to make sure that you have is black pepper. I'm using the whole black peppercorns. You could totally just use pre-ground black pepper. However, in culinary as well as like in magic, I definitely prefer to grind them myself. I feel like they're much more fresh. This is typically used for protection, but when you're using this in a baneful, it is a pepper. So it is going to add that heat and that fire, and it's going to really light that fire under this person's ass. So once again, we're working in layers, and black pepper is also protective. So this can also add an additional layer to protect you from this person. To make sure that if any work they do or any reversing work they do, this is going to be in the spell to kind of counteract that. So get some black pepper. Another ingredient that is also traditional is going to be clove. I have ground clove here. I would prefer whole clove. I just don't have those on hand right now. Cloves is very much in baneful magic, going to be used for messing with someone's mind and confusion. As well as domination. So kind of imposing your will on somebody else. That's what this is going to be used for. This is literally from Kroger, as you can see. So like I said, you don't have to spend a whole ton of money to create a spell, and a lot of this stuff you can pick up from your supermarket. Okay, another ingredient that is traditional, and I think this is our last traditional ingredient. The rest of it is kind of my own addition to this, but some salt. This is very popular in most spells. Salt is very purifying and cleansing. So you can take this here to kind of wipe this person out of your life, cleanse this person from your life, and purify yourself from their negativity. And also in baneful working, salt can be used to quite literally and metaphysically speaking, add salt to a wound, if you will. So I'm using this fine Mediterranean sea salt. I believe I also got this from Kroger. Like I said, a lot of this stuff is going to be stuff that you already have on hand. Please don't feel like you have to go out and spend a ton of money. I want to make that clear. This is my additions to a sour jar. You don't have to use any of these. If you want to, wonderful, but don't feel like I'm trying to tell you that you have to. Nor are these traditional in any way. Like I said, this is my own personal addition to a sour jar. Some of the other herbs that I'm going to be using, and not all of these are herbs either. Some of these are organic material. But this one here, this is a relatively newer addition. This is some sticky willy, which grows wildly in my local area. I'm very big on using herbs that grow naturally in your region. So I want to use this Sticky Willy. I actually harvested this, I think sometime before Litha, but after Beltane. So somewhere in there. And this was actually growing behind our shop. So here's what it looks like. This is Sticky Willy. This stuff is quite literally sticky to the touch. It's not like painful per se, but it's very sticky. So I would like to add this in here. And my intention for the Sticky Willy is to kind of create a metaphysical energetic glue that coats this person in my intention. So I'm using Sticky Willy in that sort of sense of coating them and this sort of metaphysical ooze of what I am creating tonight. The thing that I'm going to be using are these witch balls. These are also local to my area. You do not have to use these, but I am going to. These are commonly used for protection. And in Left Hand Path, because they do have these spikes on them, they're very similar to how we use the peppers. You know, it kind of adds that heat and that fire. And this is more of an offensive. Well, it can be defensive too, depending on how you're using it. But for my intention, I'm using this as more of an offensive herb, more of an attack-based herb, and to essentially throw railroad spikes and discomfort to this person. And then the last thing I'm going to be using is some licorice. Licorice is very, very common in domination in terms of the Left Hand Path. So this is going to be used for taking over this person's spirit, dominating them, forcing my will over them. That's what we're going to be using the licorice for. Licorice also has some sexual uses as well, but I'm not necessarily channeling those for this sour jar. Okay. Now, the last couple of ingredients. This is actually a jar of dead bugs. So I'm going to be using this. This already smells foul. Like if you open up the jar, it smells foul. And I also know that this person definitely has a fear of insects. So I'm going to be using that fear in this spell and using some of these dried insects. There are spiders and June bugs and moths, and all sorts of delightfully unsettling things in this jar that I have collected. So we're going to be using some of this material as well. I'm also going to be using some snake skin. This is some boa skin that I've actually gotten from a dear friend of mine. And I love using snake skin. I love what the snakes represent. And from a Left Hand Path practice, we are using this to essentially represent, because it's boa constrictor, we're using this to represent constriction. So really, you know, wrapping us around the target, wrapping our intention and our magic around the target and slowly constricting them with that energy. And then the last addition that I will be adding, and like I said, these last ones here, guys, are just my own personal additions. This is a little bit of my own Samhain incense. So this has like some graveyard dirt and some autumnal herbs in it, such as cinnamon, garlic, black pepper. I use this to invoke my ancestors with, along with the Bokor. This very much smells like the season of the witch to me, like October and September, like fall. The base of this is fall leaves. We're kind of shifting now through that season. So I also wanted to use this because it kind of represents this time. And I would like my ancestors to essentially go after this person from the astral as well. So I'm going to be using this in the jar as well. So that's going to cover all of our materials that you're going to need herb-wise. A couple more things that you're going to need. This is optional, a mortar and pestle. And then you're gonna want to get a black pen and a piece of paper. You can use parchment paper, you could use notebook paper, it doesn't really matter. You don't need a whole full sheet of paper, you just need a small piece of paper. And then this is also my own personal addition to this. This isn't necessarily traditional to a sour jar spell, but I'm also going to be burning a black candle on top of it. This is a chime candle, so you can pick up one of these for, you know, rough, I don't know how expensive they are where you are, but these typically run maybe 25 to 50 cents. I've seen them as high as $1 before, but no higher than $1. I would also recommend using a black chime candle, but you can use any color that you would associate with the sort of energy that you are wanting to invoke. So tonight we are making a sour jar. We are using our baneful intentions. We are using left-handed magic. And to me, black is not necessarily inherently those things, but I feel like it can be a little bit of a duality here. So I'm going to be bringing that duality of protection as well as keeping something sacred and shrouded. You know, things are hidden in the nighttime. So that is why I want to be incorporating this. So that way, this person that, you know, we are doing this spell on,
Allegedly.
is not necessarily going to be seeing this coming. Now, I will say that all of this is for entertainment purposes only and educational purposes only, and I'm not necessarily actually working this spell on an individual.
Or am I? Allegedly. For entertainment purposes only. Okay.
Once you have cleansed your container, and like I said earlier, we've burned it a little bit. You can see how this is filled with smoke. You can kind of keep some of that smoke in there. You can take that cone of incense that was burning here, drop it in there, okay? And that was our dragon's blood that I'm using. Dragon's blood is very protective, very purifying, very cleansing, and it also is incredibly strong. It has a very strong energy to it. We are literally invoking the dragon here, so to speak. So I'm going to now take some vinegar, and this is a brand new bottle. And we are going to pour this vinegar into this container here. And you're not going to need to fill up the entire bottle because we are going to be adding other material to it. So I would fill it up, I would say maybe 2/3 of the way. And you can always add more, but I would be a little bit more conservative because if you put too much in there, then you're gonna have to pour it out. So less is more here. Okay, so I'm going to take this. So we have our dragon's blood cone as well as our vinegar already into the jar. And off camera, what I'm going to do is add all of these ingredients together into the mortar and pestle, and I'm going to grind them counterclockwise. We do counterclockwise to remove or banish things. So I will be doing this counterclockwise off camera and adding all of this into the jar.
At least it was on that earlier. Might have to go to a graveyard later or something.
Look around and find out. Shit. Got the color jacket in the car.
These bugs freak. They smell like decomposition.
It
For
might be
real.
the decom.
Witch's balls, I am actually just going to add in a whole witch's ball here. Stem and all. Okay, so once you add all of your ingredients into the jar, one of the last things you're going to do before you close the jar up is take a piece of paper. Now, on this piece of paper, you're going to write the person's name or the business's name or the couple's name or the situation going horizontally 3 times. So I'm just going to write on the paper, education.
Or am I?
Okay, then once you write that down, you're going to flip your paper. You're going to turn it like so, and then you have your horizontal writing that you wrote horizontally. It should now look vertical. Then you're going to write your intention over it horizontally. So does that make sense? So you're going to write something horizontally like this, then you're going to turn the paper, and so then your horizontal writing will be vertical, and then you're going to write your intention over it 3 times, going horizontally again. So it's going to kind of look like a cross. And your intention could be something like, I sour your life. May all blessings that come your way rot. That's an example for you.
Allegedly, for entertainment purposes only.
So then you're going to take your paper here and you're going to fold it away from you. Gonna fold it one time, turn it, fold it again away from you. And then fold it one more time away from you. Now sometimes before I fold this, I'll add a little bit of tobacco into the paper. Tobacco is a very popular offering for ancestors. I know my ancestors love tobacco. Shit, I love tobacco, you know? So sometimes people will put a little tobacco in their parchment before they drop it in. So then go ahead and put this into your container and make sure it really gets in there, really gets coated in the mixture. Wonderful. Now I am going to come in here and kind of top this off a little bit with some more vinegar. Well, the very last thing that you want to do before you seal this jar up is that you want to spit in this jar. Do not use your blood in this spell. Use your spit, okay? I'm not against blood magic. I just don't necessarily think you want to put your blood into a sour jar. If you want to use menstrual blood, that's fine, but I wouldn't necessarily use the blood from your veins. If you want to add anything else foul, some ideas or examples might be like cat shit from the litter box, dog shit from outside, any sort of decomposing material or rotten vegetables or fruits or any sort of mold that you might be able to acquire to put in here, do so. But you want to spit into this. You spit into this, you are going to take your lid and you're going to screw this as tight as you can. Because the idea is that you're not going to be opening this again. You're not going to be reversing this. So once you do that, what you're going to do, and I'm going to just use a couple of napkins here for this, you're going to put the jar either on a paper plate or on some napkins or a ceramic dish or whatever you want, because we're going to be burning this on top of the jar. Now you could carve this candle and anoint this candle, and that would add some extra intention into this if you would like to. What I'm going to do is just do some general carvings on this candle here. I'm not going to dress this in herbs or anoint this in oil though, because my intention is already in this jar. And the reason why I burn the candle over the sour jar, and you don't have to do this, and this is not necessarily traditional. The reason why I do it is because this is a way to seal the jar. So that way, you know, your intention is that this can never be reversed. This can never be undone. And there is nothing that no one or anyone can do to reopen this jar physically or magically or astrally speaking. So a really great way to do this is to take a lighter and burn the base of the candle on top of the lid and kind of wet some of the wax a little bit. Now I like to let my wax kind of drip all over the container for a little bit, and then I'm going to take this here and stick it onto that wet wax. And the wet wax will be sort of tacky and will essentially hold the candle in place. So it will look like this. Now what you want to do is light your candle. And while your candle is lit, you want to place your hands around the candle and you want to speak your intention into this candle, which should be the same thing that you wrote on the parchment paper that you placed inside of the container. So for example, for educational purposes, allegedly, your intention might sound like, I
Sour your life, may all blessings rot. I sour your life, may all blessings rot. I sour your life, may all blessings rot.
So then you say that 3 times over the candle. Now a chime candle is going to burn for approximately 30 minutes to 2 hours. So you do want to sit with this for a little bit and allow this to burn all the way through. You don't have to say an incantation over the candle the entire time, but you definitely want to say the incantation as you are sitting with it. I would also recommend staying with this candle or keeping this candle close by as it's burning. You don't have to necessarily be sitting directly in front of it the entire time, but you do want to keep it around you. I wouldn't necessarily light this and then go run to the grocery store.